Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Sunday International Big Book Workshop. I'm Dan B, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. It's really great to see you lot today. Thank you for coming along. The workshop is facilitated by myself today. Brother Kemble is enjoying an anniversary, so we pray that he has a lovely day. This study relies on you listening, obviously, but please, I pray that you have your big book in hand and follow along with a pen, pencil, or highlighter. Make any notes and pause if you need to. Write down any questions. We can take them at the end, but I also am happy if you'd like to ask any questions in the meeting chat during the meeting. I can then sort of react on those straight away. Any inappropriate behavior will not be tolerated, obviously, and you'll be removed by one of the co-hosts. This meeting is being recorded, the audio portion only, and only of the facilitators. The recording will be shut down at the end of the meeting in order to preserve your anonymity. So have a really great meeting, I hope. And the way we'd start it here is with the step 3 prayer found on page 63. And if you care to join me, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, for thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. So, lovely. As I said today, the main thing that I would like to touch on, which runs through many pages within the book. I think the word principles, quickly looking just a minute ago, is used around 30 times, but I'm not totally sure. You don't have to see writing that down on there. About those used within the book. I'm just typing something here a second. Okay. Using dictionary terms, I like using, especially with some of the words that are in the big book, old school words or new or something I'm not too sure about. A fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior, or for a chain of reasoning. Now, we've come across many a times within the book that they're asking us to do something, suggest that we do something. And there's something that they had a bit of a problem with when they very started having meetings, the book. I think I've touched on this before, where the Washingtonians, it was a name that had been given for people not necessarily holding meetings in the correct format or not following the same principles. And by the second edition, which I'm just going to ask Charles to read for me, it's just to give us a bit of an insight as to how potentially these sort of things had to be put in place to help carry the message and to keep people on the right track. So it's XVIII, and it starts with the last paragraph, our society, and finishes on page XIX, please.
Hi, Charles Alcoholic. Our society then entered a fearsome and exciting adolescent period. The test that it faced was this: could these large numbers of erstwhile erratic alcoholics successfully meet and work together? Would there be quarrels over membership, leadership, and money? Would there be strivings for power and prestige? Would there be schisms which would split AA apart? Soon, AA was beset by these very problems on every side and in every group. But out of this frightening and at first disrupting experience, the conviction grew that AAs had to hang together or die separately. We had to unify our fellowship or pass off the scene.
Now it goes on this second, and there's 3, I think, nearly, or pretty much on of the next paragraph or 2, just as we discovered the principles. So we had to evolve principles, though none of these principles, and this is basically before we've even got into the actual process of understanding and reading about the program. And what they had to do back in the day. So you obviously don't need to scoot back and forwards into these pages, but you can find them if you want to take the notes down. But at the not the back, well, yeah, the back page of the book, 574-ish, I think, the 12 concepts in short form. And this is where they had to finalize a proper way of formatting things for people to have in their meetings and the fellowship. So AA 12 steps are principles for personal recovery. The 12 traditions ensure that the unity of the fellowship, written by co-founder Bill W. in 1962. The 12 concepts for world service provide a group of related principles to help ensure that various elements of AA service structure remain responsive and responsible to those they serve. Now, it sounds a little bit kind of not very well. It is very structured, but it's not like I'm dictating and telling people. But it was something that we have to do. I have to do within my daily life. If I'm going to take the steps, if I'm going to understand the program, well, obviously before the program, the concept of principles and a way of life were all very much built around myself. So a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of or belief or behavior, as I'm reading the dictionary, what's it here? So, for example, the basic principles of justice. Now, prior to AA, those principles within my life were all about myself, how people were wronging me, how I felt, how I wanted this, how I wanted to do this, how those people are doing that to me. It's really quite a key point that this has been established very early on, and then the concept of the principles are then taken into what we need to do. It's basically saying to us that we not only have to say, if you want to take the steps, okay, and you definitely you're going ahead with the program, there is no, as it says in how it works, there's no kind of half measures for this process to work. So we've got the spiritual concepts, which we touched on a couple of weeks, probably a few weeks ago, which we'll sort of pick up on those as well. But the spiritual side and the principles, which again, it says in the book, spiritual principles, etc., it's outlined throughout the program as a way of making me make sure that everything that I do and when I move forward through the steps, I am constantly in a position of thinking of others, how my actions and outlook and everything I do can interact and then also evolve into somebody else's life. So it's that kind of reaction to respond concept, say, for example. It's making sure that I'm having a good solid base for me to move forward as a human being, as opposed to the person that I was before the program. I did say again in the last time that I spoke that it's all very well and good being very knowledgeable about the program and the steps that we have and referencing pages and knowing what to do, but it's as much about actually that feeling of internally understanding it and it actually physically making a difference within you. So the spiritual change, the principles, all these little things are fundamental, and obviously by the way that they've laid this out and used this word regularly, because if we look back, I talked about it today on another meeting that Bill W actually went on a writing course, and he was taught there not to reuse words, or, well, yeah, if it's, say, like he was doing on a page next to each other, and he was talking about relative different things, but then he would then change a word instead of repeating it. It means exactly the same thing, but what he's done is just made it a bit more interesting for the viewer, the reader, etc., to carry on. But the word principles is always being used. And I think because it is such a structured, good, solid word, it's not, I'm just trying to think, just trying to word it in a way that makes it sound unconfusing, because it does in my head. It's not a harsh word. It's not a word that puts fear into people. Militarian. It's all these little things that can make a difference. If you saw, say, for example, the manuscript that was written, which Bill again sent out to a lot of people within the clergy and the sciences and doctors and stuff, phrases and stuff that he used could have really easily put people off. But it's only by actually having the humility, really, to say, right, I need somebody else's opinion on this, that they certain phrases and words were changed. His own account of this, used in his own story, which is the first one after the doctor's opinion, on page 14, is our first sort of, like I say, it is used within the doctor's opinion, different things all the way through. But if, Charles, you're able to finish off the paragraph on page 14, it's Bill, basically, and he's going to just finish off. We finish off on page 15. The paragraph runs through, if you don't mind, please.
You're starting from, sorry.
My friend had emphasized, please.
Okay, my friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that.
Thank you. A lot of the stuff that we come through in the program is designed for us to obviously read on our own, read with another alcoholic. But there's also a lot in here, again, when we're talking about different things as we are now. It's not necessarily for the hour or the 2 hours or the 3 meetings that you have, the 1 meeting you have a day, the 10 you have a day, whoever you are. The program is not just for us to read and understand. We need to, once this book's shut and we go off to do our day or go to sleep or wake up the following day, it needs to be something that can be a working program for us to live our daily life happy, sometimes not, just generally be around people and not be around the program, as apart from what's in your head. And if you're working, you've got family, you've got friends, you've got things to do, it has to work constantly within our daily life. And this program has set us up to be able to deal with that. And it says, the principles in our, again, the word principles, How we convey our thoughts and attitudes towards other people, again, being highlighted from doing the program, I've realized that anything, whether it's a look, a word, a tone, an attitude, all these relevant things can and will bounce off the other person that you're speaking to. Now, whether that's whether you're using positive things or bad things or irrelevant things. I remember very early on in AA, I was getting on to the understanding the program, and I realized I called it my snake tongue. I could instantly, for no reason whatsoever, if I didn't agree with somebody that was saying something, I would have to come back with some really horrible, short, sarcastic comment back to them. Then they would react, or they would have an attitude towards me. So say if it was a weekend and my wife, I'd say something. I'd get the look, the what the fuck look. Then I would feel guilty. I wouldn't say anything about it, but I'd feel guilty inside. So then what I do is then carry around the rest of the day, the resentment of what I've just done. My wife's carrying on the same. And then the whole attitude and outlook around the house, the kids, the family, this is basically just supposed to be a nice, quiet weekend, has turned into something that didn't exist for no reason. Now, the principle of this program enables me to make sure that I'm not putting myself in those situations. Okay, that's me. But the benefit is that I'm not putting somebody else in that situation. Now, there's a hell of a lot of stuff prior to AA that was I-based. A lot of pretty much everything, bar the fact that when you get past step 3, is all about what you are supposed to be doing for everybody else. We have to make sure that the point of taking these steps is that how we interact with the people that we're with, and carrying not necessarily just the message of AA, but carrying this spiritual principles in our daily affairs. And that's, for me, fundamentally how I can then fit into, as much as I can, everybody else's attitudes around me. I mean, especially when I go for work or family or whatever, I can be in a situation where everybody around me is really spiritually sick. How do I react to that? Should I react to that? No. I mean, it's hard to sometimes, and I do slip on those things. But again, this is spiritual progress, not perfection. Is that if I can make their life just that little bit easier, even if they're not even realizing that they're talking to me in that way, but if I react better than they are speaking to me, I don't feel guilty, and they actually might realize that they're not actually being a very nice person. Now, if I didn't have the program within me, I wouldn't have been able to help that person verbally, emotionally. It's enabling me to be actually make people think a little bit more and be happier about the way that they go about their lives. Now, it's very hard. I mean, you're not free. So, for example, in this day and age, going to have an employee that's been given the AA book and told, oh, go and read to the employers. And I think a lot of the stuff potentially in that section is hard to convey into something that in today's terms, as opposed to a lot of the other paragraphs and pages and chapters within the book. But it's, as I said before, I think I've said, is that it's amazing how these little things can and will eventually become part of your daily life. Now, concepts and principles again, sorry, going back. Principles. If we then add the word spiritual to it, because that is used within the big book. If we jump then to how it works on page 59, the spiritual principles within AA, where have I put that file? Beg your pardon. I've touched on this a couple of times before. If you haven't, I'm happy to send over the email with the different ones, but each step has a spiritual principle attached to it that's read. It's a bit like people saying, the different promises, etc., that are within the AA program. So say like step 1 is honesty, 2 hope, 3 faith, 4 courage, 5 honesty. I'm not sure if anybody's heard those ones before, but they spiritual concepts and spiritual principles. Now, it is hard to sort of potentially understand. It was for me, the concept of what spirituality was at first. I mean, the first time that somebody asked me, what sort of faith or spirituality do you have? I don't know what is that. I have no idea. But it's as much about having that psychic change. And when again it says psychic change, that sounds really quite grim or quite sort of advanced in your head, but all it is just that little noggin consciousness to swap from being self-centered to being of use to somebody else and wanting to. So if you've then had the psychic change, okay, or in the process of, with your steps 2 and 3, it goes very nicely together if then you've got a principle to work with. So hence we then have spiritual principles. Now this then follows us through all the way through our steps, and it's hard not to keep that in mind as you're moving forward. Page 42, I'm going back a bit there. So quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying, and I hope more useful than the life I lived before. That's part of more about alcoholism, but what it's saying there again is that I have since been brought into a way of living was infinitely more satisfying, and I hope more useful. So he's thinking at this point about how he is being useful to others around him. It goes on a little bit back and forth with that one. Then obviously we're jumping through hoops a little bit, but it's amazing how that then ties us constantly into what we're trying to understand. We're trying to make ourselves a better person. Yes, I totally understand that. But I have seen, I will mention it, but because it's not, I'm not naming names or anything because I can't remember. But there's, say, like on the Facebook Recovered Alcoholics page, there's someone posts something about I have done this to myself. I need this. I need to look after myself first, me first. Sort of like little slogans and memes and stuff that come up on there. I fundamentally believe that I feel better if I have actually helped somebody else. not if I've treated myself and done something for myself. I 99% of the time will feel 100% better about the fact that I've helped somebody else. It may be just ignoring a bad potential incident with driving. If I've flagged someone through on a roundabout to let them in because of traffic and they've totally ignored me. In the past, and I know other people probably grin at this one, is that they could get really quite annoyed by that. But by praying for that person quickly in my head, I haven't got a problem. And I don't necessarily need to do that all the time either. But as long as those, it's amazing how many things that actually I realized that I picked up lately. There's people at work and stuff will rant on half the day about how something's happened over the weekend with an altercation with a car or somebody, just the attitude that they really take to heart. And obviously by 10, you know, we're talking about the fact that we cease fighting anything or anyone. And if we carry that principle into our lives, then there is no reason to get wound up, constantly thinking about that. What happened at 7:05 on that way to work, or the way that that person, when I rang up customer services, didn't be of use to me. There's lots of little elements within our life that we have to act on, or we're put in the situation. The program for me has actually put me in a position where I can deal with life. And that's obviously something that we really need to look at, isn't it? Because like I said at the start, we are not going to be in a situation where we're able to, I was just going to say able to, but want to sit for 8 hours of a day in a meeting, hoping that we're going to find the right message from somebody else's share, or the way that somebody talks to you or makes you a coffee or does something for you. That's not going to work for us to deal with life on life's terms. And it's not something that I personally feel is useful to me. But again, if I don't take these things seriously enough to warrant wanting to, then what's the point? It is inevitably going to be a problem for me at some point. And I'm not going to say, you know, at the beginning of the principle, how it works again. Some days I'd have to really work at it. It might be just the case the way that I woke up, the way that I haven't woken up properly, the way potentially that there's seemingly huge amount of problems all coming in at once. You know, just life, things happen not in the way that you want. And I find it can be something that I have to really work on. It could be quite tiring for a day, but the relief at the end of the day when I do my 11 of being grateful to how everything's worked out or not worked out enables me to then carry on happy and content for the rest of the day. Following on from the back end of how it works, we're just gonna, if Charles, just giving you heads up, we'll be moving to page 64. It's a problem, I understand, and a lot, it can cause not a debate, but it's a bit confusion. Is one of my favorite paragraphs, to be fair, is the last paragraph on page 64. And I know it's probably one of yours now, Charles, because We're talking about the twofold illness, I'm afraid, in this one. So if you can kick us off, the last, resentment is the number one.
Okay, page 64. Resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. We asked ourselves why we were angry. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burned up.
Cheers. Thank you, Charles. Much appreciated. This one is used as a bit of a problem area within the program. When the word spiritual malady is overcome or spiritually sick used within this particular paragraph, it's taken on board that we now have a threefold, I don't even know where the word fold has come from actually, three parts to our illness. The malady, our obsession, sorry, the physical craving, and we're spiritually ill. Right. The big thing is that, yes, that is part of us, but this is the big thing that works with having to deal with people on the outside in the terms of non-alcoholics. Everybody suffers from, at some point, a spiritual sickness or spiritual malady, whether you drink or not. So that element is not part of alcoholism. This is just an extra part, and it's discussing it as to how it can affect us. If we were to remove the physical craving, we would still only have the malady. So someone, say for example, my neighbor, or I've used this as a term in the phrase, you know, when I'm speaking, my neighbor might next door is a teetotaler, but is just angry all the time. He's resentful. He doesn't like his neighbors. He shouts a lot. He's got problems. He's writing letters to the councils and stuff like that. He's spiritually sick, but he's not an alcoholic. And it states here, it says, I think, how many times we've got the word it. It starts from the resentment. The reason why we're using this, he probably wishes he'd never used it. But what he's saying is that the resentment, if you go back, resentment, it destroys more alcoholics than from it stems all forms of spiritual diseases. From it is the word resentment. Resentment is the problem. Then turning on the fact that, obviously, like I said, Bill doesn't like to use the same word. He's got the same thing as spiritual disease, spiritual malady. He's using exactly this. It's exactly the same phrase, but he's just worded it differently, because he was told when he did his study course not to use the same word again too quickly. That's when it can get a little bit confusing into reading, especially if you've got a couple of pages next to each other and he's used 4 different ways to say the same thing. I totally get the fact that resentment, bloody hell, yes, is the number one offender as far as I'm concerned, because that's where we can come from. So say, for example, I would really fearful of doing something. I would worry about it, worry about the person, worry about the fact of something that I've done to that person, to the point then that I get tired of the fearful side of it, and get really resentful about the fact that I'm fearful. But then the fear would disappear and turn into resentment. because it's almost like a progressive illness in that concept. But that's where and how we've used that as part of our life, and that paragraph to instruct our principles moving forward. And like I said, that I do it on a daily basis with people that I'm come to know, and friends and family. If I look at that person in the same way, so say that they've got a malady, they're spiritually sick. Again, it sounds really drastic, doesn't it? But it just basically means that they've got a bit of a mental problem about stuff. That person, and I've asked people about it, and they will run and keep these things in their heads exactly the same way as what I would do. But they don't drink, they're not alcoholic, they don't drink alcohol. So this phenomenon, if you call it that, is part of human nature. And it's hard to describe, I suppose, in one. I think it'd be something you could have as a debate, but it's not as the concept of what AA is about. I don't personally believe, and others will say the same. So we listed people, institutes, and principles. Okay. Bear with me a second. I'm just skipping through something. Yeah, interaction, please, Charles. One of you like you like this one. Page 83, second paragraph, please. The spiritual life. And if you can run through to before anymore, please.
Sure. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our own feet. We don't crawl before anyone.
That's cool. You sure? You're not crawling? No,
definitely not.
That's all right then. That's fine. That's all right, mate.
Energy,
yeah.
Energy down.
Get off your knees, mate. No, so the principles. Okay, we're back. Obviously, still on that. We're still on track. Somehow, somewhere, I've made some kind of sense. Can you see? I mean, obviously, we're discussing on this part how we interact with people again, aren't we? With our step 8, 9, but then again, principles. I just got to. Oh, you've done that one. Thank you very much. It's emphasizing a huge amount about the fact of, okay, we've done something that with people within the program. Okay, so we've made a list on 4. We've done our 5. We've then taken this list and done it with our 8. Yeah. So we think that we're parting the waves a little bit with people that we know that we've done something wrong to. That's great. Marvelous. That's worked really well for me, and I really hope it has done for others. But as I was going back to on the a couple of pages back, a couple of paragraphs back on the different things, principles. What I'm saying, if I run this on page 87 through my daily life, or just look at that for now, I'm not saying you have to, isn't it telling us to constantly be aware of how we interact. And these people are going to act very differently to every single circumstance that they come across. And it does get a bit baffling to me, let alone whether you've been in the rooms for hours or years and years. I'm hoping that obviously my perception and progress will get better and better with time. And I hope I learn from other people. But it's making sure that we understand this, or we have been taught this. I have been taught this. I've been asked to do this. I have been in a position to be able to understand what we're moving forward with. But you've also then got to understand that everybody, 9 times out of 10 that you come interaction with in our daily lives, have absolutely no idea about the Big Book or Alcoholics Anonymous, the program, the structure. Now you've almost got to then in your head look at this as if by doing that, by running this into your head. You got that one, Charles? Sorry, it's a busy night tonight. Obviously got sidetracked then for a second. We emphasize the principles we have been discussing. It's almost like having, this is going to sound very patronizing, but it's just I'm working on just running as it comes out of my mouth. But it's like having a child and you got to teach them. If you say teaching them to walk and they trip over and will fall over and they keep trying, but you don't patronizingly have a go at them for trying. Now, because they have absolutely no idea what they're doing, they're just happening to do it. Now, a lot of people I find in daily life that I come interact with can be in such a way mentally that they don't know why or how or care about the way that they interact with you. The big deal is for me not to let that particular person's way of life, their principles or none, control or be a part of something else within my life. And as I said, I've got this little card, AA card. It's been on my desk for quite a while now. And all it says at the beginning, it says, I am responsible. Now, if I have that in my head for just being out there in life, that enables me to then portray a way of living my principles, my spiritual principles back to them. And that can really confuse people when they've been quite sort of arsey or not aggressive to me, but about something. And I come back with something quite calm or logical. It can really make us a bit of a spin onto the way they're thinking. Now, I hope that then sinks in and they think, well, potentially I've done this the wrong way around. And perhaps Dan was right. Or perhaps I'll just think about this a little bit longer next time something like this happens. I hope that this is something that is true. I don't do it for the basis of that, but I just generally feel that the program is designed for me to actually not just help alcoholics, it's there to help the family around me and everyone that I interact with. I'm responsible. The paragraph that comes out is when anyone anywhere reaches out for help, I want the hand of a AA always to be there, and that I am responsible. Now, it's like today. Kemble's away. I'm not feeling the best, and lovingly, thank you very much, Charles, for taking the odd bit in between my coughing. That I could have quite easily. My principle in my old me would be going, right, I feel a bit rough tonight. I'm going to make sure the rest of the house know that I won't be of use and I'm going to bed and spend the rest of the day and the evening on my phone looking at Facebook or something. No, and that's the fundamental thing that would change a lot compared to the way I was before. Yes, I've got to ask my higher power in terms of, am I actually going to be of use if I try and help, which I do humbly hope I have tonight or today, whichever you are. Is that I don't, all I am is speaking to you about it was I was just hoping that my brain was working enough to be carrying some kind of program message across. But that is something that as I progress further within AA, sorry, my life generally, is that the more I progress, the more I feel I don't know. And the more, at first that used to happen, I thought there was something wrong, but now I come to realize that that's a good thing because it makes me want to know more. And all it is showing me that I'm progressing spiritually. I still have to work at it spiritually. I still have to carry my these principles in all of my affairs. And I notice when I slip up. And I react where possible to rectify that, as opposed to carrying it, as we went back through on page 64, whatever, about the resentment side. I'm going to finalize, if possible, working with others, please, Charles, on principles. There is literally pages of them, but I'm just trying to sort of give you a bit of a taster and hopefully something to go forward with looking at, and just sort of when you're reading the big book, where you notice these little things that are of use and the fundamental to how the program is working. And if it's, sorry, Charles, page 93, it's the italics, please. Tell him to spiritual. You're on mute, mate.
Thanks. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself, and that he live by spiritual principles.
And there you go. And that's the for me quite a large thing. And also they're talking about it, if say, i.e., I'm working with somebody or they come into contact with me and are interested in progressing through the steps. It's already at this stage. I'm telling him, well, you got to be honest. You have to say, I mean, which I found when I first was taking secretary role on the step 1 meeting, that this concept of not telling people what it's all about first off, as a way of potentially they might get scared. Well, I think you have to outline early on that there is progress on this program and it's spiritually based. Otherwise, you're wasting their time because they won't come back, or 2, you're wasting your own time. But as it says there, it's important then also, as we start with that person, is to let them know, again, we're being honest, is that the program has got a lot about the spiritual principles that we need to carry within our daily lives. And that's how I interact, and this is how I have evolved. I've still got some evolutions to go, I really hope, hopefully for the better. But on that note, I will call my talking to an end, and I'd gladly allow anybody to have a chat or ask any questions. I hope I was of service today, and thank you very much for your time. Thank you.